Hi, I'm Ron Jones from the Lean Berets. I am a historical kinesiologist, and I'm also the physical education historian for the La Sierra High PE Film Project. And we've uncovered some really fascinating information and historical records along our journey to research La Sierra, which was the last great PE program in America in the early 1960s under the tutelage and direction of Coach Stan Laprati. One of the articles we uncovered that was cited in some of the archives and digging around was an interesting article in Reader's Digest. This is November 1961, and it's called "Let's Close the Muscle Gap." And I think it's really important to share this with you and just let you reflect on what people were saying over 50 years ago about our decreasing levels of fitness in America. So this article was written in the height of JFK's push to promote physical fitness and the vigorous life, and La Sierra was a central part of that because La Sierra was JFK's poster child. It was the premier physical education program in America. So let's take a look back, and I think you'll enjoy this, and I hope it motivates you as well. Let's close the muscle gap. Reader's Digest, November 1961. We are shockingly far behind our friends and our enemies in physical fitness. Every able-bodied American owes it to himself and his country to get into first-rate condition and remain so. There it is in print. Let's continue. This article is by Max Eastman. The soft American, the flabby American. Are we becoming a nation of weaklings? Are we raising a generation of marshmallows? Such headlines are becoming more and more common. The problem needs a thorough going over. Ever since the invention of the wheel, men have been contriving to substitute machines for their own labor. They have succeeded so well in highly industrialized countries that strenuous physical exertion has become largely unnecessary. The effect of this upon the muscles and general health of the body is reaching the point of disaster. In the United States, this process has gone farther than anywhere else in the world. We don't walk anymore, we ride. We don't climb stairs, we take the elevator. We don't sweep the floor, we use a vacuum cleaner. We don't shovel coal into the furnace, we shift a thermostat, and so on. The word chores has almost gone out of use. We forget that daily physical chores were an essential part of a healthy life. The resulting inferiority of our muscular development was first demonstrated statistically in 1956. When physical fitness tests devised by Dr. Hans Kraus and Sonia Weber were applied to American and European children. Of the American children, 58% failed one or more of the tests, while less than 9% of European children failed. Call for vigorous action. These startling facts moved President Eisenhower to create a Council on Youth Fitness. But the program met opposition. The Kraus-Weber statistics were questioned by the physical educators, naturally, since their pride was injured. Any radical change in schools was resisted. Now President Kennedy is demanding that physical fitness be given urgent attention. He has called for vigorous action to arrest the physical degeneration of American youth. The relation between soundness of the body and activities of the mind, he has said, is subtle and complex. Intelligence and skill can function at their peak only when the body is healthy and strong. How healthy and strong are we? There has been shocking confirmation of the Kraus-Weber findings. Physical educators devised a more elaborate series of tests. Pull-up, sit-up, shuttle run, which is running back and forth, 50-yard dash, 600-yard run walk, standing broad jump, softball throw. These tests were given to 8,500 American and 10,000 British young people. We beat the British youth only in ball throwing. With that exception, their all-around fitness was 24% better than ours. British boys were far superior to American boys. British girls were far superior to American girls. And in some instances, British girls were superior to American boys. The unlimber American. The urgency of this problem is pointed up in a recent book by Dr. Hans Kraus and Wilhelm Raab. entitled Hypokinetic Disease. The doctors show that other debilitating conditions besides softness or flabbiness result from the lack of sufficient muscular action. Rigidity or tightness and actual shortening of the muscles also result. These cause some of the most painful and crippling of human ailments. If you watch a cat when she is alarmed, you will see her tense practically all her muscles. Then she will either spring upon the thing that alarms her or scoot away. When we are worried or alarmed, we also tense our muscles for fight or flight reaction. But in our civilized life, the reaction does not occur. The tension persists, and it is that sustained tension that tightens or shortens the muscles. Only by exercise can we limber up and lengthen them. In short, it is not only the soft or flabby American that presents a national problem, but the unlimber American. A survey was conducted by physicians in a clinic visited by thousands of people suffering from lower back pain, one of the commonest of human ills. It was found that 80% of them had no disease or injury whatsoever, just weakness and or stiffness of the muscles due to lack of activity. These patients found relief in exercise. Muscles need movement. The same condition with the same cause may arise in other parts of the body. Wherever there is a muscle, there is a need of movement. The heart beats all the time, but in our modern sedentary life, hearts are not beating vigorously enough often enough. It seems significant that in West Germany, where the economic recovery has permitted an exceptionally rapid Americanization of living habits, the number of cardiovascular deaths mounted within 2 years. Between 1950 to 1952, it went from 80,000 to 183,000. It is important to realize that the softness and flabbiness of Americans is not the result of any defect in our national character. It is owing to the fact that we are, industrially, the most advanced nation. Other peoples excel us in vigor tests because they are behind us in the production and distribution of labor-saving devices. It is an easy guess that the young people of the Soviet Union, which is still far behind mechanically, are ahead of even the West Europeans in muscular fitness. If we were to have an Olympic contest of average people, not only would we be beaten out by England and the West European nations, but the Soviet Union would win out against the whole Western world. In Russia, people still do chores. There is another reason for this alarming difference, however, a reason very much less to our credit. In other countries, the danger in this byproduct of industrialization is fully recognized, and measures are being taken to guard against it. In Germany, for example, such measures have been taken not only by governmental and philanthropic enterprises, but by the insurance companies, telling evidence that exercise is essential to health and life. A reconditioning center for 200 sedentary persons was founded in Upper Bavaria in 1953 by Dr. Peter Beckmann. A year later, the regional insurance organization took over financial responsibility for this venture. Today, 15 such institutions are operated in West Germany by insurance or industrial organizations. Approximately 15,000 employees are taking courses in these centers, lasting 4 to 6 weeks, systematic calisthenics and breathing exercises, running, swimming, hiking, and climbing. A person goes upon the recommendation of his insurance physician and at the expense of his insurance group. Similar institutions are being developed in Austria, Switzerland, and other European countries. Less than 1%. We, on the contrary, have delayed almost fatally long in taking action to industrialization's menace to the body. Look at a frightening fact. A U.S. government study reveals that our high school students average less than 1 hour a month in physical education classes. Grade school students fare no better. Lack of facilities and understanding have weakened many gym classes to folk dancing and social games. According to Charles B. Wilkinson, special consultant to the President on Youth Fitness, less than 1% of average American youth's time is spent on physical education, and only a fraction of that time is spent on vigorous activities that produce fitness. One thing we must do now before it's too late, is to make physical education a part of the regular curriculum in our schools on the same terms as mental education. We must provide adequate space and equipment for both. A similar testing and grading of pupils according to their gifts and their progress should become standard procedure. First steps. In a special report to the nation last summer, President Kennedy outlined the first steps. Identify the physically underdeveloped pupil and work with him to improve his physical capacity. Provide a minimum of 15 minutes of vigorous activity every day for all students, boys and girls alike. Use valid fitness tests to determine pupil physical ability and to evaluate progress. The adoption of these measures, the President said, will ensure the beginning of a sound, basic program of physical development. That is true, but it is only the beginning. Some states already require their schools to follow 15 minutes a day for physical activity, but those 15 minutes are largely spent talking, standing around, playing some game, or making preparations to play it. They differ little from turning the children out for recess as a relaxation from their studies. What our bodies need in this push-button civilization is not relaxation, but vigorous muscular effort, like running and calisthenics. Where schools don't have adequate gym facilities, children can take a short but hard workout in the schoolyard. In bad weather, the classroom itself can be adequate for modified calisthenics. Let's start a crusade in pursuit of muscular health and attendant well-being, a crusade towards more enjoyment of living, and also toward our adequate leadership in the defense of the free world. For the indubitable muscle gap between us and those who would bury us may well in the long run prove more disastrous than any alleged missile gap ever will be. And then there's a little section here in the back called How Do Your Children Measure Up? So it basically lists sit-ups, standing broad jumps, and gives some standards of age 10 to 17, what those marks would be for excellent, good, satisfactory, or poor. And just to pull out one section of that, we'll look at the pull-ups for boys. The girls actually had a modified recline pull-up, so it wouldn't be as familiar to people today. So I'll give the regular pull-up example. It would have been a over the bar grip like this, palms forward, no kipping, no knee raises, no movement in the legs whatsoever, just straight up and down, chin over the bar. And the number of pull-ups, age 10, boy, if they were excellent, they should do 6. Age 10. Good was 3, satisfactory was 2, poor is 1. Now, as a credential physical education teacher and someone that's been in the fitness industry a couple of decades, I can tell you that most high school students today can't do one proper pull-up. And so think about that. This is 1961, age 10, poor was 1 pull-up. So let's look at age 17, okay? So pull-ups for boys, age 17, to be excellent was 13, to be good was do 10, satisfactory was 7, poor was 4. 4 pull-ups, and you're still considered poor at age 17 in 1961. All right, so this is 1961. Let me pick my way back through this article and help people today understand this. I've been researching the history in PE and fitness for over 20 years, so I don't expect everybody to know what I know at this point, but I'll do my best to help you understand this and give you a little bit better historical context, because I think, at least taking an American perspective here, it's very important that we come together on this so we can move forward. We really need to do this as a team. So let's take a look at it, okay? 1961, all right. The idea that we're getting flabby because of technology is nothing new. We're still talking about that today, but interestingly, they were talking about that in the 40s and 50s as well. If you go back, in the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s, they were talking about it. This is where physical education was born. It was born out of the need to be physically active because people were worried about the amount of people moving into the cities and working on an assembly line. So this is a very old issue, right? And it's not going away anytime soon as well. So that's how the article began. It went into, in the call for vigorous action, once again the Kraus-Weber test is cited. I don't know how many times I have to mention this. The Kraus-Weber test is pivotal to American fitness history. Most people, even with a degree in physical education, exercise science, physical therapy, they don't have a clue about the Kraus-Weber, what it represents, and why it's important, and why we should still be looking at it. And yet this was a test that was developed in the 40s, presented to President Eisenhower in the 50s, and it caused a huge backlash or reaction to our lack of physical fitness, and a sport explosion, and more sport arenas being built. If you haven't looked at the Kraus-Weber, you really need to take a look at that. I would recommend, we have some videos up on our YouTube channel in the Lean Braze about that, but also look at the Bonnie Pruden interviews I've done with Enid Whitaker, because Bonnie Pruden was Dr. Kraus's research assistant, and Enid traveled the world with Bonnie for 40 years, and she's very knowledgeable about this test and what it means and why it's still important today. President Kennedy was very assertive and at times aggressive about our need to come together as a nation for physical fitness. He understood that this lack of physical fitness is a national security crisis, and it's more so of that today than at any other time in our history. Hypokinetic disease, the book by Hans Kraus and William Robb, that's pretty interesting, and it's not the first time I've seen reference to that. I actually have that book. This is interesting to go back over. Only by exercise can we limber up and lengthen them. There's a lack of movement disease. Our mentor Jake Monlix talks about this. Hypokinetic. Hypo, not enough. Kinetic, movement. We're not moving enough. We're developing these movement diseases because we're not doing it. Okay, so when you know that, it's time to get busy and not just move more, but also move well. This stiffness, this is something the grandparents used to talk about. You have to be limber, you have to be flexible, and 13 years of college, they didn't really emphasize that a whole lot. And now we have athletes that can't touch their toes, and they're playing year-round sports. That's a recipe for disaster. I can tell you that as a kinesiologist and also a student of history. It's blown off today by coaches and parents and kids, but it's extremely important if you want to age well without back pain. Wherever there is a muscle, there is a need for movement. That was an important quote. This program in Germany in 1953 was very interesting. Basically, that's corporate wellness, right? That's worksite wellness, although you can trace that back to pre-1920 as well. So for people that say that's new, that isn't true when you know history. However, this is 15,000 employees taking courses for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. I think this is very significant. Systematic calisthenics, breathing exercises, running, swimming, hiking, climbing. These are the survival skills. What comes down and filters out of history, generation after generation, is you need to train for survival. Run, jump, hang, climb, push, pull. It has to be outside of the gym, and that's exactly the type of programming that they were doing in 1953 in Germany, and it was working well. Bud Wilkinson is cited here, and he's a big name in the history of the President's Fitness Council. From Oklahoma, football coach. He did a lot of promotion of physical activity around the country with people like Stan Leprotti. And this is a critical point that the author is making in the article, that we need to have as much emphasis on physical education as mental education. You can't have one without the other. This is a clear point in history. The Greeks said sound mind, sound body. They come together, okay? You have to have both, or you're just not a productive citizen, basically. This is what history shows. The need for vigorous physical activity is critical, of course, more now than ever. And I think that the language used in this is really interesting. And I think the more we get back to some old school, the better off we're going to be. And it's really going to take a great national effort. So to read the first paragraph one more time: the soft American, the flabby American, are we becoming a nation of weaklings? Are we raising a generation of marshmallows? We already did. So now what? let's close the muscle gap.